Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on our journey and exploration through the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2020. And today, in particular, I'd like to focus our attention, if I may, on that title, which has been designated Spy Number 1060. This is from the year 2000. The name of the filmmaker is Alejandro Iñárritu, and the name of the film is AMORES, PERROS. This is the film from 2000, and it is from the filmmaker Alejandro Iñárritu, and the director of photography is Rodrigo Prieto, and this is written by Guillermo Arriaga, and it stars, among others, in this great cast Emilio Echevarria and Gael Garcia Bernal, Goya Toledo, and Álvaro Guerrero, Vanessa Boche, etc. This is the explosive, dynamic, and poetic and emotional and intimate and raw film that is Amores Perros. The plot, or plots, are very complex in that we have essentially not one but three fundamental or basic plot strands or plot stories that are tied together through a variety of a lattice of network linkages that we see established as the film progresses. And I think it circulates or focuses around a particular singular significant event, namely an automobile accident, a very sudden and shocking one. And from this, or to this, these plot lines converge and then diverge. But part of the great poetry of this film is seeing how these various stories are interlinked between and among each other, both in terms of plot and also in terms of thematic and human dealings. So there is a lot here in terms of a density, if you will, of thematic concern that are already present in the context of this very elaborate and well-structured plot or plots. The film itself is depicting various characters in the place that is Mexico City, and we have various walks of life, various classes, if you will, that are being depicted. From the first story, which deals with a certain family dynamic that is in a relatively poorer area of the city, and seeing how these characters are trying to deal with their situations, not just economically, but also in terms of the internal family dynamics. And my goodness, these family dynamics are very complex and quite almost Shakespearean in terms of the epic nature of the dynamics, and how there's a certain cause and effect situation going on as the plot unravels itself to its really bold and quite unnerving and memorable conclusion. And in this story too, we have one of the perhaps more famous or infamous aspects of this film, namely the depiction of the world, the underworld of dog fights, which is a very shocking one. And it's quite unsettling because of the depiction of brutality that this world itself seems to suggest. And we should take note here that some of these scenes, I think, are very disturbing, as they should be, because they are. But a lot has been made in the press and also in the discussions by Iñárritu and company afterwards, as well as in some of the supplements here included in the Criterion collection, about how these scenes depicting the dogfight world, how they were essentially constructed for the film. And so we understand that there is no actual violence being portrayed, but rather this is something that is being constructed for purposes of the film. That being said, the scenes are still very disturbing, and they are certainly not for everyone. So, but that is also, I think, one of the ways in which the world is being reflected, in particular this particular storyline, in terms of the violence and brutality and the raw urgency, if you will, of this kind of world that these particular characters in this line are living in. And still, there is this thematic way that this story of fights is also paralleled in the human drama as well, the tension that exists between the human characters and how, if at all, that tension is resolved. And that forms part of the basis for the electrifying, brutal, and truly unbelievable and so memorable explosive nature of the drama that unfolds. And it's so amazing as well as to the accessibility of this world. I mean, this is a world that is in a different part of the world than where I live, but still the feelings and thoughts and motivations of these characters is so accessible, and so it feels so true to life that one becomes automatically absorbed in the proceedings so profoundly, thus making for extremely absorbing drama. And that absorbing drama continues on through the other plots. So in the next plot we have, which is Daniel and Valeria. This is a very interesting situation where we have, admittedly, set of characters, Daniel and Valeria, being from maybe different walks of life in terms of wealth and status and class than the characters that we might have seen in, say, the earlier film, and the earlier storyline, excuse me. In the middle story, we have a focus on a particular couple, and this couple has itself its own interesting and very dramatic dynamic to it. And from there, we see a certain plot line involving another plot line involving a dog, but this time a dog and the floorboards, and how this slowly begins to reveal or indicate a kind of tension between the two characters that just grows and grows and grows. That's also due to the consequences of the significant event of the film that has directly affected one of these main principal characters in this second storyline. And so we see a lot of pressure cooker type of dramatics involved here in this examination of this couple and what it is they are going through. And it becomes almost surreal, and in a very sometimes comic way, other times in a very shocking way. But always in this surreal way. Indeed, in some of the supplements included in the Criterion release, director Iñárritu describes this middle portion, in particular, as being very much like a Buñuel film or Buñuel story, in terms of the layering of dramatic absurdity and how that generates tension and comedy, but in a very volatile manner that's also very highly, intensely dramatic. So. And it's, as I say, it's reflecting seemingly different parts of society in Mexico City, but still some of the concerns, or many of the concerns, are very much similar, namely the way that family dynamics are structured and restructured, the way that dogs have a kind of direct and also thematic significance in the lives of these people, and also the idea of actions and consequence, and how that has a very emotional impact on the psyche of these characters. So this and many other things, I think, are what makes this story very profound and very memorable indeed. And then it goes into the third story, which is El Chivo and Maru, and this is focusing on a character that is seemingly a vagrant And we've seen glimpses of him throughout the other two stories, but we realize what his backstory is and who he is and who he was and what it is he's trying to do and the people that he is trying to reestablish some kind of contact. And that too leads to a very significant conversations and dialogues and examples of the nature of violence, the nature of redemption, the nature of forgiveness, and also the nature of family and what it means to try to establish or reestablish family connections, especially in this world where there are many tough choices that need to be made. And depending on those choices that we make, they have consequence. And what do we do in the face of such consequence, especially after much time has passed? And so there's this notion of regret, guilt, violence, horror, and also forgiveness, and the possibility for some kind of rebirth or transformation. And that becomes, I think, another focus of this film, again, very elegantly and very poetically set forth in this part of the story, as well as other aspects of the other stories. And so we have, therefore, a very complex web that is seamlessly put together and so professionally put together, but also there is this emotional jolt that accompanies every single scene. It feels very raw and powerful, and you're not quite sure what will happen next. And some kind of bold flourish will lead to some irreversible set of consequences. So this is a film that is very dynamic on a cinematic and technical level, but those cinematic pyrotechnics are always matched by the emotional intensity, and the emotional intensity is always matched by the cinematic pyrotechnics. Therefore, this film becomes this overall package of a film that whose impact was so felt when it was first released 20 years ago. And as I indicated, it's a film whose impact remains potent and powerful and emotional, as it did when it was first released. What a film this is. This is so great. And I'm so happy that it is emerging in the Criterion Collection in this way, in this Blu-ray. This is the film by Iñárritu, which is AMORES, PERROS. So the Blu-ray here from the Criterion Collection is purported to be based on a new 4K digital restoration of the film, which is supervised by the director Iñárritu and also director of photography Rodrigo Prieto. And it is stunning. It looks and sounds so pressing and so urgent and so full of energy that it's an amazing thing. So it's wonderful to get this version in the Criterion Collection and to commemorate the 20th anniversary of its initial release. So wonderful stuff. And the film presentation as well is accompanied by a number, quite a number indeed, of supplemental materials that make for an overall superbly engaging release from the Criterion Collection. First is a one-on-one discussion between two filmmakers. This is Alejandro Iñárritu and Pavel Pawlikowski. And these two filmmakers are talking about AMORES, PERROS and about Iñárritu's work as a filmmaker. Pawlikowski, of course, is a world-renowned filmmaker in his own right. But what's so wonderful about his presence here is that he is so gracious, and he is so willing to keep the focus on the topic of Iñárritu and AMORES, PERROS. And it's such a delight to see these two artists of the craft of modern cinema together and talking like this. The nature of the recording of the conversation is a remote one, especially considering the current times that we live in and the World Health Crisis. So they are talking remotely via, it looks like Zoom or something of that nature. But it's a very smoothly edited conversation. So it's and and there is no lag or anything of that sort. So it's a very, as I say, smooth and well-presented conversation between these two artists and men. again focusing in on AMORES, PERROS, and Iñárritu. And they're talking about seeing the film many years after it was first released. And Iñárritu is talking about the feeling of energy that he has, also talking about the state of Mexican cinema at the time of the release in 2000, and how that was also linked directly and indirectly with the state of Mexican society and Mexican politics at the time, and how this film in many ways changed the face of Mexican cinema and also changed the face of cinema writ large because of its bold, dynamic, charged energy, as well as the depth of the story that it was telling. And this also leads to a discussion about about Bernal, about Gael Garcia Bernal, and about essentially discovering him for purposes of his performance in this film. And of course, we know Bernal's career is one of those great careers in modern cinema. And here, the greatness is already on display, because what a performance Gael Garcia Bernal gives here as Octavio. Wow, so much truth and honesty, and so much of the moment and feeling is there, and intensity, and also earnestness, and passion, but also a sensitivity that is amazing. And so they talk about Bernal, and they also talk about Arriaga and the idea of how this is related to other films that Iñárritu would make later in his career. And also Iñárritu also talks about Pawlikowski's work, and how he admires Pawlikowski's precision in his own art, and how he's able to say so much in a very elegant and poetic way. And so he says that, which I think is a really wonderful way of describing Pawlikowski's work. And then Pawlikowski in turn is so gracious, and then turns the conversation back to attention on Iñárritu. And so there is this mutual respect that these artists have that is so palpable and so in the air, and it's wonderful to be witness to this. So a great conversation. Again, it's approximately 28 minutes, and it was recorded this year. So it's a supplement that was made by the Criterion Collection. So well worth it. Please check it out if you can. And then another recent Criterion-produced supplement from 2020 is another remote conversation among the actors Adriana Barraza and Vanessa Boche and Gael Garcia Bernal and Alejandro Iñárritu. And these Adriana Barraza and Vanessa Boche and Gael Garcia Bernal are all actors who played characters in the first storyline. So it's nice to see the three of them plus Iñárritu talking remotely, and seeing the mutual love and friendliness that's in the air. And they also talk about the feeling that was on the set, and how the vibe and atmosphere behind the scenes could be said to be very happy and fun and cheerful, which might be a really stark contrast with the intensity and brutality that's depicted in this particular storyline. So that's an interesting bit of information. Also, they reveal a lot of these details, which I think are so great, about, for instance, how the mother character, played by the Barraza, how she, as a performer and as an actor, could essentially mimic or adopt any dialect that Iñárritu required in terms of her character. And in fact, this leads to a conversation about how Iñárritu indicates how the mother's inflection and use of language seems to be from a particular part of the city, or it's a particular dialect of the city. And this is something that I would never catch because I'm not fluent in the language. So, and that discussion of language and dialect, and and sections of the city is also very important, because it's also a way to make distinguishing traits between and among the characters, not just within one storyline, but also between and among the various storylines of the film. So that's a great conversation. And also they make a great point too, which is it's a film that's set in Mexico City, but we almost never see any so-called postcard images, any kind of landmark parts of the city, but instead we see other aspects of the city, the lived-in parts of the city, what Iñárritu describes as the mosaics of the city, which I love the use of that word. This also gives the opportunity for the participants, and Iñárritu in particular, to talk about the great aspects of the other stories. We have the talking about Goya Toledo and Alvaro Guerrero, who are the two actors who are the principals in the second story, and how they had a lot of, there was a lot that they had to do, and they pulled it off so magnificently, and how the story is very much like a Buñuel type of story, etc. And it feels also from a different part of the city due to wealth and class, but still their concerns are very real and very direct and very brutal. And what it is they have to go through in terms of their own relationship is also one that is very central to their drama. And it brings up something too that I think is worth pointing out, which is that I think in particular in a triptych or three-part structure story, I think a lot of times the second part has a lot of pressure on it in terms of it's the point of the story that can't necessarily have any a resolution or follow-through or satisfaction of any plot arcs, because it's the middle part. And so it has to sustain a certain level of drama, but still maintain the sense of continuity and continuation into the third part. And so there's a very interesting dynamic with the second part, and it's hard to pull off, I think. But this particular story is pulled off so well, and I think that's due, of course, to the artists involved, and for example, the great performances given by these two actors. And so I'm so glad that Iñárritu mentioned them as he did. And also he goes and talks about Emilio Echevarria, who plays El Chivo, which is one of the key performances of the film, and his presence is undeniable. And there is, of course, the acting and theater background to the actor, and also the performance is so filled with deep-rooted gravitas and human tragedy, and the potential for redemption, which is such a powerful motivator in any arc of human drama. What a great story that is, and what a great characters, and what a great performance it is. So that and others, and also they talk about Rodrigo Prieto, the director of photography, and how he has this Zen-like presence about him, except one time when he apparently lost his temper on the set. So that is a very funny and humorous anecdote that the four of them here share, which is another example of why this is a great supplement to check out. So please check it out. This is called AMORES PERROS Reunion. Approximately 35 minutes. Then we have another supplement which is called Prologo, and this is approximately 5 minutes, and this is rehearsal footage, and I understand that this is also assembled by the Criterion Collection, and recordings by Iñárritu about the rehearsal period of the various actors. And I understand also that the rehearsal period was quite long and extensive before the film actually began shooting. And so we get a number of those rehearsal scenes here. And so you get the actors in rooms, but they're acting out the scenes. And then also sometimes we see them in the particular locations, but it's always in a rehearsal mode. But even in these rehearsal stages, there's an intensity, there is a real focus and concentration that is so obviously being exhibited. It's a testament to the great strength of all these performers that are involved, and it of course carries through in the final product so well and so clearly. So and also on top of this, we get some recorded comments by Iñárritu And so this is setting forth some of his philosophy and perspective on filmmaking in the context of this film, but also filmmaking in general, and how he says, for example, that film is the act of transmutation of an abstract idea into something concrete. And from there, it's the idea that one aspect of the filmmaking aesthetic is to capture reality, but also another aspect is to try to transcend reality. And I find this to be so profound and so much of a, to borrow a phrase used by Gael Garcia Bernal in the earlier supplement, very much a eureka moment. And so this is so well worth it. So please check this out. The Prologo, 5 minutes, another great supplement. And then we have a documentary which is called PERROS, AMORES, and Accidentes. I hope I got that pronounced correctly. But this is approximately 43 minutes, and this is described as being directed by Iñárritu in 2020. So it's a new documentary, and it translates into Dogs, Loves, and Accidents. And what this is an assembly of the footage that was essentially shot, I think, on video, kind of the behind-the-scenes making of at the time, including the rehearsal footage and things of that sort. And it's assembled together here, again, by Iñárritu for purposes of this documentary. Really insightful, really helpful, and we get to see, again, the film being made from the ground up, as it were, in the moment, at the time. Current, fresh, honest, and raw, and powerful. Also, we should point out that the documentary does start with some footage that was taken of some actual dog fight situations. So this is not meant to be the film itself, but as we know, this is a world that really existed. And so in order to get a sense of this world, which is quite unpleasant in and of itself, of course, we have some brief images of a certain setting of this. And there's a sort of a warning title card at the very start. And so it's very brief, but it's still quite uneasy. So just be wary of that if that's something that is concerning to you. But it does come and go quite quickly, but it's still there. But there is a warning beforehand, just in case that's needed. But then the film goes into this behind-the-scenes footage. Which is, I think, very expertly assembled, and yet and also gives a great sense of the feeling and mood and atmosphere. So 43 minutes. And then we have a one-on-one conversation described as also being from 2020. Gustavo Santaolalla. And this is approximately 10 minutes, and this is the musician who provided the musical score for the film. And this is so great because one of the great aspects of this film is the musical score, and there's a particular use of instrumentation, especially the guitar. Santaolalla speaks in particular about how when he was trying to get a start in the industry, he was told by someone in the industry how he seems to be hitting the wrong note. And that is a sort of theme or conceit that I think is employed by Iñárritu and company to great effect, because in a very playful and positive way, Santaolalla describes his music here as a musical score filled with wrong notes, but the wrong notes are used in such a right way. And he uses a phrase called Santaollagismos. Excuse me for my poor pronunciation, which is the concept of using the quote-unquote wrong note, but it's that twang or that echo of a particular wrong note that is so dramatically right, that is emblematic of how brilliant this score is. So a 10-minute interview, well worth it. Please check it out if you can. He talks also about his approach, about how he starts with a state of silence as a kind of state of meditation, and also he's speaking about his approach to various instrumentations that are employed in the score. That's not all, because then we have another new supplement, which is described as being a video essay by Paul Julian Smith, approximately 23 minutes, excuse me. And this, he is narrating a sort of montage of images and stills and scenes from the film and the trailer and the like. And he talks about the state of Mexican cinema and also the state of Mexican society and politics at the time prior to and around the release of the film. And he talks about how there are very implicit aspects of class and wealth that are being discussed. For example, he brings up a comment that I was not aware of, that the location of the significant event of the traffic accident, that is the central event of the film, he describes it as having taken place in the area called La Condesa, which is, I understand, a very wealthy area of town, which is, I think, a very significant detail, which otherwise would have gone over my head because, as I say, I'm not directly familiar with Mexico City. So these sorts of details are really helpful and really insightful for me, and so I appreciate that. That's an example of why I appreciate this very much. And also he talks also about the set decor and how this was compared, especially by maybe American critics, compared to, say, the film Pulp Fiction, but also there are some concerns and themes that make this film quite distinct from the film Pulp Fiction. And he also talks about other things about the film, about a particular shot or particular final sequence that he did not find in the script draft that he had access to in terms of the archives of the making of this film. So that's another interesting point as well. So that and other reasons are why this video essay are so great and so valuable. Please check it out if you can. And then we have another section which is called Deleted Scenes. It's totaling 17 minutes. And this is a series of scenes that were deleted from the final product of the film. And we have an optional commentary track over this section by Iñárritu and Prieto, essentially going into the reasons why it was cut out, the focus of the scene, and what ultimately was why it was felt by the artist that maybe it could be deleted, and also some of the reactions that they had. So again, really insightful. And it also goes into further illumination of the final product itself. So the deleted scenes are commented on, but also how their deletion affected the overall final version of the film. So that's also worth checking out. And then we have another section, which is a music video section. And so we have 3 music videos that are related to the film. So great stuff. And a trailer as well. So that's also great. So this rounds out the supplements that we find on the disc. So as we can see, it's packed with a lot of great supplements that are, for the most part, new and Criterion produced. We don't have a commentary track. But I think in lieu of a commentary track, we get these supplements, which, as I was trying to indicate, are so full of informative bits of data and information. So well worth it. And as I say, Criterion produced a great one here. It's packed with new stuff. And also we have this, which is the booklet, which I've taken out already from this Blu-ray right here. And here's the back. The booklet is, I'm happy to report, a stapled booklet. So I love the staple booklets because it affords a lot of potentially voluminous essay writings. And here we have 2 essays. One is by Fernanda Solórzano, Force of Impact. It's translated from the Spanish. And then we have The Dogs That Heralded the Millennium by Juan Villoro. And so these 2 essays, and this is also translated into English, these 2 essays are brilliant, absolutely brilliant. The Force of Impact essay is indicating Iñárritu and also the impact of the film and the thematic consequence of certain aspects of the film and the specific storylines of the film. And then The Dogs That Heralded the Millennium also talks about the film, but in talking about it in the context of politics, of society and history, and also literature as well. So it's an indication of how I mean, it's a film that is saying so much and it represents so much. And so we have these two essays that are so brilliant, so great, and I recommend that you check them out. Again, I've said it before and I'll say it again, the essays are one of the reasons why Criterion is so great. And so please read the essays if you can. We have two great ones here. And then and then there's some information about the casting credits and also the restoration and production credits for the Blu-ray release. And so, my friends, that is the Blu-ray for AMORES PERROS from 2000 from Iñárritu. An explosive, emotional, intimate film that is epic in scope, and also it has so many profound things to say, and it's still saying them in this emotional, powerful way, even 20 years after its initial release. I'm so glad it's here in the Criterion collection. Again, no commentary track, but Criterion, I think, does its very best to make up for that in a whole collection of newly produced supplements, which is great, really, really great. And it's a presentation of this vivid film that is wow, what a film this is. This is AMORES PERROS. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. I very much appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.